On everybody. Okay, we're back. We're live. How we doing? All right. So this week, I'm actually really excited to talk this week. It's going to be shorter, but I want to kind of keep it concise and kind of get an idea of where we're going, where we're at, kind of what all makes sense, and maybe a little bit about kind of the philosophy I take with a lot of this stuff, and really how the body can regenerate and heal. So we're going to be talking about the keys to regeneration. Now, I did not come up with these. I want to make that very clear. I actually came across a video, Dr. John Bergman, who's out of California. And actually, believe it or not, a patient of mine kind of familiarized me with some of his stuff. And I saw one of his videos, and he talked about the 5 keys to regeneration and disease reversal. And I really liked it. And I figured, why not take kind of those 5 concepts, which aren't mine, but then I would dive into them kind of in a way that I think makes the most sense for me and kind of how I guess, kind of look at things. So that's ultimately kind of where I want to go with today's videos. We're going to go through kind of all 5 of these phases, and I'm going to kind of break them down in my own kind of way. Hopefully that's going to make sense to you. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, maybe some things will vibe, maybe some of them won't, but if you get something from this, you take something from this, and if not, you don't. That's okay. That is totally, like I said, fine by me. But without further ado, I got to fix my notes really quick because I put them out of order, which is, well, things come up. Okay, there we go. That's better. All right, so let's hop into this really quick. Again, some of the things about doing this live is hiccups show up. There's a little pause, but that's okay. So in his, I guess, according to him, there are 5 keys to regeneration and disease reversal. So just going through the names of them real quick: the assimilation of nutrients, which I will kind of equate really to gut health; excretion of waste, which I've talked about all the time. That's essentially detox pathways; growth, reproduction, and then adaptation. Essentially, everything you do, and this is a kind of simple way to kind of break things down. So if there's basically 5, those are the 5 keys: assimilation of nutrients, excretion of waste, growth, reproduction, adaptation. So essentially, big picture, what are we talking about here? It's really going to be anything you do: how you sleep, what you put in your body, how you exercise, which drugs you take, which surgeries you perform, etc. All of it. Is it helping one of those 5 things? Is it helping the assimilation of nutrients? Is it helping the excretion of waste? Is it helping growth? Is it helping reproduction? Is it helping adaptation? Or is it not? Or is it helping a combination of these 5? Is 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5? Or is it hurting 2, 3, 4, or 5 out of 5 of these? And essentially, that's what it is. The more things you do that are going to positively affect those 5 things, the better your health is essentially going to be. Now, the human body actually is designed, ideally, to last roughly 120 years, believe it or not. And what's interesting if you take out really infant mortality, which is kind of the biggest thing that skewed the lifespan really downward, and why it jumped so much over the past century. Although now it's finally going in the wrong direction, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons why. If you take out infant mortality, really the lifespan of adults is more or less the same for the most part throughout a lot of our history. But be that as it may, we're going to kind of jump into each of these 5. What are some things we can do? What are some things that we should, look into? So like I mentioned, the assimilation of nutrients. The body needs nutrients to build cells, fuel activity, repair damage, extracts what it can from what we put in, what we put on ourselves, and then passes the rest on through the excretory pathways. And we'll get into those because that's really number 2. Obviously, the nutrients we use are to help keep us functioning, detoxify waste, keep us healthy, keep us active. Now, the assimilation of nutrients to me, now skin health is going to play a role in this because you can assimilate things through your skin, through your nose, and obviously through your mouth, put through what you put in your body, right? But when I think of assimilation of nutrients, I think primarily of gut health. Now, I think in today's world, I know dysbiosis is a bit of a kind of catch-all term to some degree, but I do think just because of the world we live in, just because of the toxins we're exposed to on a regular basis, I think all of us to some degree probably have at least a little bit of dysbiosis going on. Just because, again, these things, a lot of these things are pretty much out of our control. Now, plenty of them are, but I want to talk a bit about the bigger components that you can play a role with or play a role in to help improve this. Now, a big one that I talk about a lot is stomach acid. Do you have enough stomach acid to break down your food? Many times I see here in America, the answer to that question is no. The reason being is one of the most common drugs taken by Americans are things like antacids, proton pump inhibitors, H2 blockers. These are usually taken if you have symptoms of what we call GERD reflux. And I've done other videos on this, so go check that out. But the shorter version of this is really we mistaken most of the time high acid for low acid. And what's happening is when we don't have enough acid, if the pH is not low enough, if it's not acidic enough, that lower esophageal sphincter does not close. Acid can bump up into the esophagus, causing GERD. What do? We tend to take, again, antacids, proton pump inhibitors, H2 blockers. These further diminish our ability to create enough stomach acid, and the cycle tends to get worse over time. So what do we really have to do? The first thing we have to do is stimulate the production of stomach acid. Now, some people will use pancreatic enzymes, which I think are useful in their own place. I think a better way to go about it is to do one of two things. One, you can use digestive bitters. The other is you can use betaine hydrochloric acid to help kind of replace that. Personally, I prefer the bitters on a regular basis. I just like the using of more natural herbs to stimulate it. The other part of this is water intake, usually around meals. Now, if you're drinking a lot of water with meals or close to meal times, you're actually going to dilute the stomach acid, making it harder for the stomach to essentially do its job. And the reason why the stomach is so important is because everything further down in the digestive tract is going to be affected by what happens in front of it. So in other words, if the stomach isn't doing its job, it opens the rest of the digestive tract, the liver, the pancreas, the gallbladder, and the intestines. It opens them up to potential dysfunction because the stomach isn't doing its job in the first place. For example, things like SIBO, for example, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or what it's called, tends to happen because a lot of these bacteria are not taken care of in the stomach and eliminated in the stomach appropriately. They essentially can survive that. So that's the first thing. The other, another huge one that I see here in America is fiber intake, and really the lack of it. It's not the amount of it; it's the lack of it. 95-ish% of Americans do not consume even RDA levels of fiber, which is like 30 grams a day. When you're talking about optimal health, you're looking at 50 grams plus, and you'll see some even go as high as over 100. The cool thing about fiber is there's really no upper limit where you start to see problems. The trick is you kind of have to slowly introduce it. If you do it too fast, I use the gym analogy all the time. If you work out, if I go to the gym and I haven't been to the gym in 3 years and I try to bench press 300 pounds, chances are I'm going to hurt myself. It's not going to go well. I might not even be able to pick up the bar. Why? Because I'm deconditioned. You literally have to retrain your gut to do that. And we know because the microbiome and the function of the small intestine and large intestine is going to be all intricately related to our fiber intake. It is going to be very hard, if not impossible, to maintain a healthy microbiome if you are not getting adequate amounts of fiber on a regular basis, because fiber essentially is the fuel, is the food that that ecosystem, that microbiome needs to function at its best, to create the short chain fatty acids that we then use for a variety of processes in our body. The pancreas is another huge one. This comes back to blood sugar regulation, and it also releases some other digestive enzymes. Now, again, part of this is the amount of enzymes that are released is going to be dictated by how acidic that chyme is coming out of the stomach into the intestines. If it's not very acidic, the gallbladder is not going to release as much bile. The pancreas isn't going to release as many digestive enzymes. And now you're getting undigested food, which means that's going to affect your ability to assimilate nutrients. Other two big ones, and I should have started with this because it's just that important, is literally just chewing your food. There's a saying that goes that you should chew your food to the point where you shouldn't even be eating your food, you're drinking it. We got 32, or hopefully we have 32 of the best juicers on the planet, and they're located right in our mouth. So we have to use them. We have to take the time to be chewing our food 20 to 30 times, really pulverizing it like it should be. The other thing is actually getting into a sympathetic state as quickly as much as we can while eating. Many of us tend to eat on the run, on the way to work, maybe like in the car, or really stressed. Sometimes being stressed out will eat. How many of us have stress eaten before? I've even done it, so I got to raise my hand on that. But the key is, if we can get into a parasympathetic state where we're shunting the blood flow away from the muscles into our digestive tract to get that pumping 10 to 15 minutes before we're sitting down for a meal, and we're using our five senses. We're seeing our food, we're smelling it, we're tasting it. We can hear the sizzle, we can feel it. It's all of those things. We need to like literally enjoy that sensory experience. And many times we just look at food or eating really as like an afterthought. We have to actually be present with that food, get into that parasympathetic state, maybe use some nasal breathing techniques that, again, we're going to be talking about towards the end of this. So, all of these things are going to be really useful and really helpful. Oop, just going to take a drink. Man, I've been doing a lot of talking here today. Second one, excretion of wastes. So essentially, this is elimination pathways, right? How many times have we talked about this before? You have 4 of them: breath, pee, poop, sweat. That's it. That's all we got. So really the question is going to be, how open are these pathways on a regular basis? Are you going to the bathroom? Are you having a bowel movement at least once a day? Are you breaking a sweat? Again, ideally every day, but at minimum 3-4 times a week. Are you drinking enough water that we can actually filter out everything through the kidneys? And are we breathing properly? Now, like I said, we'll be talking about the breathwork course at the end of this, but it's essentially getting those open. Are they open? Are you eliminating toxins on a regular basis? Are you able to excrete them on a regular basis? If those are blocked up, then we have to, again, take a step back, learn as to why, and then get them moving again. Usually the biggest one I see personally sometimes is being able to go to the bathroom, or it's sweat. So again, that could be issues with the liver. In the case of going to the bathroom, again, that's a big thing when it comes to fiber intake. That's a big one, but could also be stress related, particularly in if you look at traditional Chinese medicine. The large intestine falls under the metal element, and that's a lot, has to deal with like literally letting go. So are you holding on to things? If you are for a long time, again, it could be sometimes emotional type related, because those stresses are only coming from one of 3 things, right? Physical, chemical, or emotional. Okay, number 3, the growth part of it. So this is the body's able to grow to its maximum size, shape, and dimension. Now that is dictated by DNA, our genetics to some degree. But then after that, what are you doing to maintain homeostasis? Like what are we doing? Are we able to regenerate and build new cells because we're recycling like a billion cells a day on a regular basis. So, are we able to hit those checkpoints? Are we going past those checkpoints to a point where the body's going into a case where cancer cells are regenerating? And then again, why is that happening? What is the environmental impact as to why that's happening? Reproduction now is the same thing. Now, this is becoming a bigger thing now, particularly in the last few years, because we're now seeing like we are on a trajectory. If you look into the work of Sean Swan, we're on a course right now where we can potentially have a, believe it or not, a generation of men who are completely infertile because of the amount of endocrine disrupting chemicals that we are exposed to on a regular basis. Again, not necessarily to be alarmist, but it's more to inform, right? So, again, whether it's plastics due to like BPA or something like that, whether it's due to GMO foods and herbicides like glyphosate that we know disrupt our endocrine system, whether it is due to makeups and skin creams and sunscreens and everything in between that is going to potentially cause issues to our hormones, to our endocrine system. It could also be found again in our water supply. So, are we drinking clean water? Or are we drinking water that has trace amounts of things like fluoride in it or antibiotics, believe it or not, or heavy metals? All of these things are going to mess with our hormones in some way. And it comes then finally to the adaptation part of this is, are we able to adapt to our environment? Now, I remember when I was taking a course back in school, um, I had a really good graph that unfortunately I wish I can't share here, but I am looking at it and I want to kind of talk about it. And we use this concept known as allostatic load, which essentially is how well are we able to, if we stray away from homeostasis due to again those three main stressors, physical, chemical, emotional, but those can kind of go under other names, right? Is it trauma or is it a mechanical adaptation? Is it stress? Is it sleep? Is there an infection or microbiome imbalance? I think more accurately. Is it a toxic environment? Is there a nutrient imbalance or deficiency? Is there neurological dysfunction? Is it electromagnetic EMF toxicity? Is there other stresses going on? If there are, because there always are, we're never going to be able to get rid of them 100%. But what can we do is, do we have the water soluble vitamins? Do we have the B vitamins? Do we have vitamin C? Do we have the other antioxidant nutrients like zinc, like selenium, like vitamins A and E, like the electrolytes we need to kind of make this work, like vitamin D, like iron, because we need all of these things to kind of combat that free radical oxidation. Many times I see that a lot of even sometimes I don't want to call it subclinical, but a lot of things, a lot of times that I see lower thyroid, sometimes that could be due to a maladapted adrenal response due to kind of excess stress over time. So something kind of worth looking into. Our environment is always changing. And we are always adapting to it. And many times, if we want to get better, we have to kind of put ourselves sometimes in uncomfortable situations, try new things, and always adapt to kind of what's next. Everything is fluid. Everything is always kind of turning and changing. So it's really important to kind of understand that our ability to adapt is ever changing too. So that's kind of my take on this. I thought it was a really cool way to kind of go about things. And the question then becomes like, what are the things to do? So I believe there's kind of 7 or 8, depending on how you break them up, keys really to getting better. The first is intention. Are you doing everything with a purpose? Is there intention behind what you're doing? Social circles. I think relationships are really important too. Who you choose to spend your time with, and are they supportive of a lot of the changes you make? I think the social aspect of healing is sometimes overlooked. Unfortunately, and I deal with this too, is in your life, you'll realize that a lot of people, once you start to realize what is going on, are wildly unhealthy. And generally we tend to take on a lot of the characteristics or habits of the people we tend to spend the most time with. So if we literally start spending more time with other people and ingratiating ourselves in that way, that's going to change how we think and feel. Again, is there a hot what is the intention behind what you're doing? Breath is really important. We'd be talking about the breathwork course in a little bit, at least on Instagram. Sleep is really important. Are you getting good quality sleep? Getting exposure to natural sunlight on a regular basis? Are you getting nourishment from real food? Are you moving your body every day? It is that simple. There are details you can dive into to these a bit deeper, but that's the basics. That's it right there. So, you know, it can be radically simple and many times it is, but the less sexy part of this is more about the consistency of it. And that's kind of what it is. Um, that's what we got for today. I just kind of wanted to break that down. I really enjoyed that. So thank you for tuning in. The breathwork course is coming. If you want to work with me one on one, I'm still taking some new clients, particularly online. So if that's something you're interested in, shoot me a DM on Instagram or you can email me, drvincentesposito@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.